Well, hey there, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today and hanging out and continuing on the journey with Jennie. That's me. And as we know, it's always a journey and it's always about growing personally and professionally. And so it's my mission really to add value and to empower others to discover their possibilities so that they can have permission to start living their best life now. There's no reason to wait. You can do it too. So I am so honored to have Tracy Spears with us today. She is an amazing leadership guru, and I'm going to read her bio because I think it's so important and so well written. It actually has inspired me to go back and work on mine as well. And I just want to share that Tracy is a certified speaking professional and the founder of the Exceptional Leaders Lab. She specializes in developing leaders, inspiring teamwork, and enhancing inner office communications. The innovative content in her keynote speeches and workshops is taken directly from her best-selling books. So yeah, go on out and buy some books. What Exceptional Leaders Know and the Exceptional Leaders Playbook. Her energetic and interactive approach has helped leaders and aspiring leaders all over the world improve their leadership skills, their communication, and their understanding of how people people and organizations succeed. Now, I could stop right there because that's all amazing, but I've got to read this last paragraph that was shared with me. Tracy is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma, boomer, and an accomplished athlete who is a member of the U.S. national softball team. And how amazing are those ladies that just did it again? So thank you, Tracy, for all you do for the Sooners as well. That makes my heart so happy. I love the Boomer Sooners. Now, this is all about you, and you've got a presentation for us, and so many of you guys are watching here. Go ahead, and Tracy is excited to have some interaction in the chat box. Make sure you're muted, and yes, this is recorded, and I will share the video out with you after our class today. So now, Tracy, it's all your show. Let's go.
Listen, thank you. This is one of my favorite things to do, to roll our sleeves up and work with a bunch of incredibly connected people that really want to be better, that are working on their leadership skill set. So this was an easy yes for me today. So in the next, a little 30, 45 minutes, our conversation, I do want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to be paying attention, Teresa, I'm going to be paying attention to the chat box over on the right-hand side. So while you're watching the PowerPoint, I'm watching you. I can see your beautiful faces on the screen. So if you want to raise your hand and say, hey, I have something to say, let's do it. Let's let this be interactive. I'm going to kind of tee this up by saying that I have an incredible passion for salespeople. And for 29 years, I worked in corporate America as a national sales trainer. At one point, I had about 600 people that were on our sales team. And my job was to figure out how to get them the best tools. How can they walk into a room and in 30 seconds get somebody's trust? So I admire you, what you're doing, all of the things that you have to do to check the box to be a successful salesperson. The conversation today we're going to have is a little bit around leadership. And it is, one of the things that we found with all those 600 people is we would promote people based on their production. And when you promote people based on their production, it's a little bit like saying, gosh, so you're a good heart surgeon. That means you'd be a great dentist. Well, maybe not. But I'll say this. I think we all have this, we kind of operate with what I would call a functional toolbox. Inside of that toolbox, all the things that make you a great salesperson, all the things that make you great at whatever your current position is. So whether it's expectations, personal production, usually personal production is the big asterisk. And so when you think about all of those tools that usually get someone to a leadership position, here's the giant joke. The things that make you people pay attention to you, the things that make you a great personal producer do not make you a great leader. And that toolbox looks very different. So that toolbox around how do I, set expectations for my teams? What about coaching and recognition? What about the self-awareness piece? All the things, the emotional intelligence things. I'm going to say this, that toolbox, that's where the upside is. The ability to navigate building high-performing teams, I can tell you, early in my career, I was a top 5 producer. I was, I was doing great in sales. There was a guy named Steve Myron. He said, I'm going to be flying to Tulsa to talk to you about your future. Said differently, I'm like, yeah, I'm about to be promoted. He flies to Tulsa, comes to my office, and he's like, listen, you're not going to be promoted. And you're not going to be promoted because you're a super high producer, but the average production of the people on your team is below the company average. You're doing all the work. And if you want to be in a leadership role, then you better figure out how to up the game of the people on your team. And that was it for me. I was like, I'm not getting promoted. No, I was like, oh my gosh, that's how you know if I'm a great leader. It's not because I'm doing more, it's because my team is doing more. And so for me, I can just tell you that lesson that day, I was forever changed, because building high performing teams is hard. And I'm going to say this, it's not for everybody. And I do oftentimes watch people get in a leadership role and say, ooh, this isn't fun for me. And the reason it's not fun is because you can't just continue to produce more. You can't add more hours to the day. If you don't change your strategy, you're going to get burned out. You're going to, start experiencing this. The thing that is joyful for you is going to be the thing that you dread doing every day. So let's shift that a little bit. So when I was sitting in some of those different offices and all that time that, I was doing the sales training, I would go sit in the offices and, what makes this office successful, and why is this office isn't doing well, and why is Boise, Idaho outproducing Chicago? And it always came down to one word. What do you think the word is? Put it in the chat box. What was the word? It always came down to what? I'm watching in the chat box. Yes, it came down to the leader. It came down to the leadership, their ability to set expectations. And I will say this, there's a lot of conversations we could have about things you need to start doing. Let's agree on that. I could give you a list of 35 things right now. Start doing this and start doing, and you would either do them or you wouldn't. But it's the things that you have to stop doing that you can do immediately that can have an immediate effect on your team. So let's kind of talk through the 7 things that you have to stop doing to be a great leader. So you see it on the screen. Here's the first one. Man, you got to give up being the smartest person in the room. You have to give up the need to always be right. Now, there's a little bit of a liability in this, right? Especially if that's what you're hanging your hat on is, I just know a lot of stuff. I can be counted on for my historical knowledge. I know how to navigate contracts. I know, listen, you have to make room for the people on your team. Let's define, first of all, leadership as influence. That's it. That's all leadership is. It's influence. It's how you think about how you are affecting all of the people on your team. And at some point, if you always have the answer, you're going to create a bunch of super lazy people on your team, because they're going to be like, well, she's going to do it anyway. He has the answer anyway. Just go to him. You have to teach people how to think. I have something on my desk. Let me see if I can reach around here. You have to teach people not what to do, but how to think, right? That's, I think, a big function of high performing leaders. So you're in the recognition business now. What's more important than you getting accolades, what's more important than you being right, is taking that light, that spotlight, and shifting it to the people on your team. You have to be a reflector, if you will. I'm not going to say I don't love praise every now and then. It's nice to hear a nice bio being read. But what's really important is those people that are making things happen on your team. So, to be in the recognition business, I'm going to ask you to throw some things in the chat box while I finish this. What are some of the strategies? What are some of the things that you're recognizing on the people on your team? How are you creating recognition? So start throwing them in the chat box. So I'm going to keep going. I think you have to think about that as one of the strategies that you utilize in leadership. That is definitely a lever that needs to be pulled. What can I do to make people feel important? What can I do to make them feel like they are emotionally invested? I love that, Rick. Yeah, shout outs on social media, tagging somebody, that definitely has to be on the list. I often sometimes hear handwritten notes. It's crazy how important a handwritten note is. Yes, can we agree on that? I have a guy, his name is Felix. He works at TD Williamson here in Tulsa. I've been working, he's a great guy. I've been working with him for several years. In his office, you know what's sitting right up there with all of his books and textbooks? It's a handwritten thank you note. I thanked the guy for buying me lunch one day. And here's this kind of burly guy that works with welders and all that, and he's saving a thank you note. So I don't know. I love that. Yeah, Kristen has one from Jennie. Hey, nice. Sometimes just, that recognition of, I see you not when everybody's watching. I see you when nobody's watching. I think about the leader that starts to recognize things that don't necessarily translate to here's a big award. But what about when somebody shows up with a new suit on, or somebody shows up there with a new car, or somebody shows up with, they just upped their game a little bit, recognizing some of those things, those effort events. Man, there's a lot of upside for leaders in the leader that's willing to do that. So the people that are on your teams, the people that you report to, recognizing people that have anything to do with your success, listen, huge upside for you in that. So that's the first thing. They need to always be right. They need to be the smartest person in the room. You know the saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to get in another room. Teresa talked about all the, amazing women she's in the room with. That tells me a lot about Teresa, because she, iron sharpens iron. And when you start sharing space with people like Lynn and Frauke and some of the, Angela Byers, like, here's what I know, your game definitely goes up automatically just because other people are at the top of their game as well. So that's the first thing. Here's the second thing. And this might surprise you that this is going to be on here, but this is something you have to give up in a leadership role. Now, I love a good story. I love hearing, you're not going to believe what she did. I get it. I like all that. I was raised by my dad and my mom, two very different takes on this. My dad would walk in a room, my mom would be telling a story, and my dad would go, Tracy, you don't believe anything you hear and half of what you see. I'd be like, yes, sir. He'd walk out of the room. My mother would go, anyway, so like, she, couldn't wait to finish the story. I'm going to tell you, don't believe anything you hear and half what you see is a pretty good strategy, because the person that's gossiping the most is the least reliable person for accuracy. Can we agree on that? I'm looking at all of you. I see Valerie, yeah, Tressa, yeah, kind of nodding up and down. You're never getting the truth. When somebody runs to you, they have an agenda. There's something that they're translating in their story that usually makes them look a little bit better than the person they're talking about. Can we agree on that? So gossip oftentimes is a way to spend a little bit of, political capital. As a leader, I'm just going to say this: it is the fastest way to destroy your credibility. The people that you let, take your time, it definitely, your biggest asset you see on the screen as a leader is who you give your time and attention to. And I will say that, we spend most of our time in leadership roles thinking about the rain clouds, right? The people that there's just always a big storm over their head. They walk in a room, you're like, oh gosh, something else is going on, or there's some other drama. I want you to start thinking about the people that are just showing up every day, solid. They're doing their job. They are nice, optimistic people. You can build an entire organization around nice, optimistic people and, outproduce all of the drama-filled teams that I see. I still am called in oftentimes when we have low employee engagement scores. That's kind of what I do for a living now. They'll bring me in and say, gosh, there's something happening with the team, and the employees aren't happy. And I can just tell you this: gossip and, back channeling, all that stuff is always part of my report back to leadership. It's the leadership that's allowing that to happen. That's such a leak for a high performing team. So I'm just going to say this: Billy Airy, who was at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, when I was a young leader and I was really struggling with this, and I was saying, I have an open door policy. You can come in and tell me anything. And they were. I was like, oh my gosh, how do you navigate that? She said, no. I have an open door policy, and this is what it is. You can come in and tell me anything. You come in and you say, you're not going to believe Edna. You're not going to believe what Edna did. And this is how Billy Airy would handle it. She would say, you know what, Stephanie, I do want to hear what Edna did. Grab a seat. Let me go get a cup of coffee. She said, I would go get a cup of coffee, and I would come walking back in my office with Edna. And I would say, now, Stephanie, you were about to tell me something that Edna did, and I thought she should just defend herself. So I'm going to sit here. Let's kind of get to the end of this. And listen, you don't know how much gossip happened in that organization. Zero. Like you only have to do that once. And it might feel dramatic, but as a leader, you have to bring balance to that conversation. You have to get out of the business of wanting to hear the drama. That is a muscle. That is like, people get really good at that. You have to get in the business of assuming good intentions from everybody. I'll show it to you. This is on my computer. I assume good intentions from everybody. And when you live like that, like they're doing the best they can, that's the first thing I would say. If you came into me and wanted to talk about Edna, I'd say, oh, wait a minute. Did you talk to Edna? Nope. We can't have this conversation then. And if you can't come to a good solution with Edna, come back and tell me. Like if you start being that leader, by the way, it's just easier for you to not be carrying around all those emotional problems. Can we agree on that? I'm looking, okay, Tress, I'm looking at some of you nodding up and down. I'm going to move on because I'm spending too much time here, but I just want to say that your life gets a lot easier when you get out of some of that petty stuff, we'll call it that happens on your team. So there you go. So you got to be, one other thing, I'll give you this as a strategy. If your personality is zero chance, I'm bringing Edna into this, at least bring balance to the conversation with this question. What would Edna's version of this story be? Done. That's all you have to do. You somehow have to infuse a little bit of sanity in the conversation. So if I say, wow, I can tell you're really upset. A, did you talk to Edna? Nope. B, well, what would her version be? Play this out for me. What's so interesting about that is the person always kind of ends up falling on the sword when you don't feed the fire, when you go, wow, I feel like there's more to this. I feel like this is out of context. Right, I'm moving on, gossip's it. Here's the next one, distractions. My business partner, Wally Schmader, he lives in Norfolk, Virginia. And he's Bernie, for those of you that are old enough, he's Bernie Taupin to my Elton John. So like he writes the hits on, in a basement in his house, and he throws it, over here, and then I, give it air. And I call him afterwards and say, this works, this doesn't work. So I get this email from him. It's been right before the pandemic. And he said, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing. This is exactly what came over. Tracy, this is what we need to be talking about. Focus is the new IQ. I was like, what? And I replied back, I have no time for this silliness. Like, I got a lot of shit to do. So he's like, no, you don't understand. And so he had just heard this podcast, and it was Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. And the question that the interviewer asked was, what do you believe is the one word, if you were to pare it down to the one thing that creates success for you, what's the one thing that you feel like has been the most important thing? So they both write it on their 3x5 card. They turn it around. What do you think is the word that's on the 3x5 card? What do you think? Yeah, Stephanie, it is a flower, sir. Stephanie is right. Focus. That's it. That was the word. They turn it around. They kind of look at each other. They kind of laugh, and they moved on, because it was not a mystery. That's you have to, at some point, quit trying to go wide, and you have to go deep. When you're building your business, you got to go wide. You got to take care of everything. You have a lot of things. But as you start to move up in an organization, or you start to build a high performing team, your job is to get more specific about what your value is. Because if you don't get specific about what your value is, you're going to start to, get burned out by doing all of the jobs. And you're not going to be creating a team where people feel like they can be valued. You know how I feel valued? You delegated something to me. You know how I feel valued? You actually said, I think you're better at this than I am. Why don't you take that on? I had somebody that was on my team. Her name was Teresa. And I was a very undeveloped leader. To me, a lot, the thing you're not good at, you start to write about and teach about. So she comes into one of our sales meetings, and I love it when I'm talking to salespeople. This is so fantastic. She comes into the sales meeting. She's like, yeah, I was looking at the scripts that we're using when we get on the phone and start, doing our calls, and I feel like it could be better. So she's immediately challenged me. She's a brand new person. I have a group of seasoned people in there. Everybody on the team was like, oh, this is not going to go well. And so I'm like, okay, people are watching. I'm going to act like I'm not a jerk. And I go, okay, yeah, well, listen, if you think you can do better, why don't you take a swing at it? Trying to intimidate her, leadership at its worst. And she's like, fantastic, I'll do that. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you present it back to the group on Monday? She's like, great. So she leaves excited. I go into my office, Annie comes in and she's like, I don't think that girl's going to make it very long here. And I'm like, yeah, so, Monday comes around and I'm not going to lie, I'd kind of forgotten about it. So we're at the end of the meeting and she goes, yeah, well, I wanted to run this new script by everybody. So like you could hear a pin drop. She stands up, she hands it out to everybody. She's like, this is what I think if they've never heard of us before. This is what I think if they have been familiar with us. And so she starts reading through it. And I watch everybody kind of worry about me and they start getting completely locked in on her. You know why? Because it was amazing. What she was saying to them was an updated, more applicable, more relevant script. I had been with the company so long at that point that I was just doing, this is what always worked. And so I watched somebody that felt incredibly passionately about the scripting and was really gifted at that. And so I'm going to tell you this, I was smart enough to stand down. I was smart enough to say, maybe let's try it. Knowing I'm shredding every script I've done from that point on. Guess what Teresa becomes? She becomes the person that starts to rethink how we do all of our scripting. Guess what? Our production that year soars. Guess what? She becomes a top 5 producer in the company out of 600 salespeople because I did the thing that good leaders do. And I was not a good leader at the time, but I stoked her confidence. Yes, this is good. Yes, what you're onto something. That could have gone very differently. I could have said, no, this is the way we always do things, but I didn't. And I'm just going to tell you, that was a big lesson for me to be able to get out of the business of, I'm trying to go wide instead of deep. And for me to go, you know what, that's not where I provide value anymore. I've been distracted by scripting and all these little things that I used to be in charge of. And to get into the things where I could really provide value was important. I'm going to pause here for a second. I want to unmute or jump in. Anybody want to have a comment or a question about that? What do you think? And you see the question on there. What are some tactics and strategies that you use to help you with your focus? Anybody?
I'll chime in. I think that it's, time blocking and honoring that time blocking, having accountability with that time blocking. We know that time blocking, quote unquote, is so important, but we always have the distractions that knock us off of that. So what are your tips on staying focused in that time block?
Listen, I was, thank you for the tip. Yeah, the time blocking piece to me is everything. It is, the ability to focus on something for 90 minutes. I love the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's Francesco Cirillo created, these time blocking Pomodoros is what he called it, because I had a timer that looked like a Pomodoro tomato. And what it is that you set your timer for 25 minutes and you go deep, or you set it for however long you want to, 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. I'm just going to tell you how many of you feel like email is running your life? Does anybody else feel like email is running your life? Okay, it's running your life because you're letting it. You're looking at your email all day long. Some of you are looking at it right now. Stop it. Some of you are letting that, even having like it comes up in, so that whatever's happening, you can still see it. I do a lot of executive coaching, and I see when chats or instant messages or all that stuff starts to come up, and I'm like, can literally just, for 30 minutes, shut it down. So I'm going to say this to you as someone that is in the same boat. I love all of the things that are happening, but every time that new message comes in, what it does to your brain, the distraction it creates, the inability to stay focused on what you're doing is a compromise. And it's a compromise that I can tell you affects the output. Said differently, have you ever thought, okay, I'm going to come in on Saturday, or I'm going to come in at 6 in the morning, or I'm going to come in when nobody else is here. And all of a sudden, the minute you get a little bit of time where phones aren't ringing, kids aren't, at you, You don't even have your email on. Something you thought was going to take a half day, you're finished with it in 45 minutes because you were able to go deep on that and you weren't giving it half your attention. So yeah, Chris is definitely, you got to turn on all the red numbers, get them off your phone. I know that you're in the business of being reactive and responsive. I understand that, but it doesn't mean that you can't say to your clients, I'll respond to you within 24 hours. I'll respond to you within 90 minutes, whatever the timeline is. There's no one that thinks you're supposed to respond within 35 seconds. We just do it. And we are addicted to it. If you saw the Social Network, Social Dilemma, whatever it's called, you know, that's all by design. So to be super mindful of that would be really, really important. Last thing I'm going to say on this, and it's simply this. If you could make a decision to limit how many times you look at that email, the things that you get sucked in on, somebody else a lot of times will take care of those things, right? So if you could be better about that. And if we were to work together, the first thing I would do is I would say, let's look back the last 30 days, last 60 days. I want to see your calendar. I don't need to see it. I want you to see it. And I would say, how many of those meetings in the last 30, 60 days did you not need to go to? How many of those meetings were every week that now you could do it every other week? How many of those meetings are you doing, monthly that could be quarterly? How many of those meetings are 60 minutes and they could be 30 minutes, right? Just renegotiating your time. I don't know if you're familiar with Parkinson's law, but Parkinson's law says that whatever amount of time you allot to something, that's how long it's going to take. So if you put an hour on the calendar, guess how long the meeting is going to last? It's going to last an hour. That same meeting, if you put 22 minutes, weirdly, the meeting would be finished in 22 minutes, right? So we fill that time arbitrarily. So I would be super, careful about your calendar for a bit and think about that. Yeah, I don't have time to tell you about how long it takes me to pack, but it depends on how much time I have. All right, here's the next one. Oh my gosh, I hate this one. You got to give this up. The need for frequent praise. I'm going to be super dramatic with you. Nobody gives a shit about you anymore when you're in leadership. The higher you go in the organization, the less they care about how well you're doing, and the more they care about, what are you going to do for me? How can you help me? How can you make me hit my targets? I was blown away in the organization I was in. I, at some point, finally got to the table, was finally a vice president. And I remember sitting at that big mahogany table, and all I could think about was, I can't believe how little recognition there is for how big my job is now, right? That people are pulling me into this low-level stuff, and it's because they don't know. They have no idea all of the things that you're juggling with. They believe, and it's implied, that when you get promoted or you start to produce at a higher level, that you don't need that praise anymore. I'm not saying that's true. You better find a praise team, like find people that you go, man, I just need someone to say, you are a freaking rock star and you're crushing it. Like, I have those people I know I can go to and say, I got to go mow the yard so it looks like I actually accomplished something. So I can see the lines in the yard. Because I think a lot of times you don't get that immediate gratification. And if you're looking for that externally, I'm just going to say this. I think if people use praise for fuel, there is a reckoning that happens and there's a crash that happens, and it starts to get, categorized as resentment. People aren't paying attention. It's interesting. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? You can just raise your hand. You don't have to jump in here. Yeah, I see a couple of heads nodding. I don't know. I can just say this, that, for the most part, your work and results absolutely have to speak for themselves. You cannot continue to use recognition for fuel as you move up in an organization. And so when you think about the people that you're not getting recognized from, what if you started to think, you know what? They just expect that I'm producing at this level. That's a veiled compliment, right? That's not something that, you should look at that as with any other way other than, they just know that I'm now producing at a high level. How many of you believe you have imposter syndrome? Anybody other than me? Okay, yeah, come on, everybody has it. Imposter syndrome for high producing people. I'm going to say this, it does make you better. it does make you sharper. I grew up, at the Mingo Valley Trailer Park, where Admiral and Mingo, there's a traffic circle there. I grew up in that trailer park. Every time I go to the airport, I look at that last street. I lived at 848 North 91st East Place. Lived in that trailer, 3 houses in. And I'm going to tell you, I'm sitting there. I'm in 3rd grade. The teacher's like, come back tomorrow, 4th grade, come back tomorrow. And let's talk about what you want to be when you grow up. So I'm sitting there telling my parents, and my dad goes, well, I don't know what you want to be, but I can just tell you this. You aren't going to be able to go to college unless you get a softball scholarship. He didn't say academic. He didn't say basketball. He said, that's it. And so I remember thinking, oh, okay, well, that's my way out of the trailer park. And, let me just tell you, I didn't need to have a lot of people telling me how great I was on a mission, and I knew what I needed to do, and it kept me very focused. I used that as fuel. And I will say this, people that have the ability to use that as fuel and not look externally what anybody else thinks, but do that internally, I think that they have a much better opportunity for being able to parlay some of those stories and that imposter syndrome into something positive. So there's some good news from imposter syndrome. But the bad news is when you can't fully step into that new version of who you are, that's where it becomes a liability. If that gap gets, you start to get more and more accolades, you get hired in an organization, but you don't grow your internal sense of yourself and let that start to match up. It's probably never going to match up, but if you can't do that, there's definitely a liability. And I'm going to say this is definitely something that can hold somebody back. Stephanie, I'm going to jump in and see what you said. Feedback, I just think I want to know if I'm in the right, for sure. Yeah, feedback is good. And if you're using it for that, fantastic. And listen, throw me a trophy every now and then. I'm good with that. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying you can't start to rest because other people aren't giving you what you need. Anybody want to comment on that before I move on? Kind of hitting a little bit of a hot button here. No?
Well, you know what? I think too much of it almost feels ingenuine. Right. And it's like, are they praising me because they just like me and they just feel like I need it? Or is it real? And, and are you going to get the negative feedback too? Right. Are you giving me like the whole picture, or are you just kind of, sugarcoating it? So I've gotten more purposeful about like, give me the full picture, right? Talking to my coaches, just make sure you're giving me the full picture. I don't want you to stroke my ego or just give me the praise. So too much of that, I think, can also feel ingenuine and start kind of having you question what kind of feedback you're actually getting. At least
I love that. I love what you just said. We're actually writing about this right now in our next book. It is because out of balance, you do create this over sense of your own skill set. But I want to make sure that, and tag on something you said, we have a tendency to gravitate to the bad things, and we don't take in the good things. Like, 19 people could say, I love that shirt. And somebody could go, wow, why are you wearing a plaid shirt? I've never seen you plaid. And be like, I know, I shouldn't be wearing plaid shirts. I know, like all of a sudden, like you would connect to that one thing. And so to be able to bring in the good things equally with the work on the feedback is also
I think that's part of a byproduct of the imposter syndrome as well. You're looking for like the one bag, to kind of validate what you're feeling and thinking already. So yeah.
Listen, I want to come back and do self-limiting beliefs, and I want to talk about internal success stories, because what you're talking about, Valerie, right now, I'm incredibly passionate about. So, and whoever just had their hand up, come back to me. Kathleen, was it you? All right, do it.
It was me and Valerie.
Okay.
Go ahead. And I love what you're saying here, because you're talking about the need for praise. Do you do something because you want praise? And I have to, sit there and look at myself and say that. It's kind of like the person who's like, oh, I sent him a birthday card and he didn't say thank you. It's like, well, did you send it for the praise, or did you send it because you wish that person a happy birthday? And then we can start, if you're doing things and driven by the need for praise, you know what I mean? You can just get yourself all off kilter and just miss the whole point of what you're supposed to be doing.
Okay. I love this conversation, and judgment is the word that comes to mind. When you are in the judging business of what's happening, you are in the wrong side of that. And it's not, it's okay to say, oh, they didn't send a thank you card. But to judge it and try and then take it to that next level, that's
Right.
I am super sensitive to that. Like when someone goes, I can't believe they didn't, I'm like, maybe no one ever modeled that you should do that. I mean, I think they're doing the best they can. I honestly believe everyone is doing the best they can. Now we could debate that. You all could say there's 3 people I know they're not. Okay, I don't care about them. I live my life under the idea that everybody's doing the best they can. And the reason I do that is it keeps me out of judgment. And that's where that keeps me in the right energy where I need to be. What if you believe in that we're all vibrating energetic beings, then you'll connect with what I'm saying.
Yeah. So what I'd like to add in with that, Tracy, what I
Please.
found at my young old age and failing forward is that it was hard to separate the personal side for praise, like versus the business. So when I finally figured that out, like expecting something for my kids, so like, they didn't send me a Mother's Day card. Whereas my business side now, I don't expect, I'm giving because that's who I am. And if I get something back, great, but I come from contribution. And so when I changed that, I had to do a shift. And it's from a lot of training and classes with Jennie and my MAPS coach and James Shaw every morning for 2 years, is that I had to do a shift in my brain of the personal and then the business.
I love that. I can tell you, I work on, and I have a group of people that we all work on it. We all call each other on it. The minute somebody says, I can't believe they didn't, or I can't believe, like when you're talking about Mother's Day, this happened recently, and somebody said, gosh, I can't believe they haven't, tried to see if I'm available. And somebody else said, what if you assumed good intent? Like, you're judging that. And of course, the son calls on Saturday and goes, where do you want to go? It was just assumed that, it's Mother's Day, we're going to do something. But the anxiety the whole week of, I don't know if he's going to call. I don't know what's going to, that was so unnecessary. So I love what you're saying. That immediately start thinking about Father's Day, Mother's Day, all those expectations that we put on people. If you're expecting anything out of anybody, there's going to be a resentment and there's going to be a downside for sure. It's the expectation and the judgment.
And it's much easier to not have any expectations of them.
And let me add to that. I think you should have reasonable expectations, right? Of what contextualizing what their experience is in that as well. So, I know I don't have a ton of time. I'm going to move on, but I'm putting a pin in this so we can come back to it. This is going to kind of also feed into that. Labels and biases. Listen, I feel so passionately about labels and bias. I do a lot of unconscious bias training, and I'm going to say this for leaders. I think that we're all biased, by the way, and it makes us more efficient. If we had to think through, every single thing, methodically that we need to do, it would paralyze us. So a bias is the way the brain can be more efficient. So though bias wires us for efficiency, it does not wire us for accuracy. And so some of those connections that we make are unfortunately inaccurate. So when you start stereotyping and saying anything like, well, all salespeople are, or all title companies are, or all insurance agents are, like anytime you start to do that, and then you're not seeing people for who they are, you're lumping people together. We all do it. And I think we have to be super mindful. There's a few different types of bias that pop up. Affinity bias pops up. Affinity bias is that ability that we like people that are like us. We disguise that by saying, oh, I just have a really good gut about people. I hired them. I mean, we just had a connection, and I'm just that kind of person. I can just read a person. No, you don't. You have a biased gut feeling. If we were to dig into that a little bit deeper, what we would see is you had something in common with them that was obvious. And that affinity bias, I'm okay with affinity bias. When people that are hiring people, they say, look at my team, they're high producers. I'm like, fantastic. Who did you not hire? Because you didn't have that same gut feeling. That's the blind spot, right? That's the piece where, diverse teams can help organizations perform at such a higher level. However, affinity bias can get in the way. Confirmation bias is the scariest of all of them. It's the bias that I think it just keeps me up at night. And it is where we look for information to prove that what we already believe is true. And if I were to, throw in the chat box, where does confirmation bias really affect us as a culture? What are some of the areas where we're experiencing a lot of confirmation bias right now? Watching the chat box. Yes, Kathleen. Any TV station, any radio station, media. Yeah, we're consuming news that only we know. I'm going to go to that channel because I agree with everything they say. And I'm going to say that this is not a political statement. This is, we have to make up our own minds about things. There is not all or nothing. We've moved so far away from the center that everything has to be in one camp or another. And I think we're losing a lot of really good conversations, and we're losing the opportunity for us to maybe see things more multidimensionally. So that's as nice as I can say it. Church is also, there's so many areas. Bottom line, do your own work, right? Think for yourself and, be open to that. I think the last thing you see on here, and I see this a lot with sales leaders, somebody comes into the organization, they're introverted. They don't have a lot of confidence. We make some decisions. I don't think they're going to be very good at this. Have you ever been surprised by somebody? You're like, I don't think they're going to be a good agent. All of a sudden they're like crushing it. Well, if you think about their experience, if you make a decision about who they are too soon, then the way you treat them is going to also determine their competence level. Said differently, that person, you have to be able as a leader to watch people at different intervals in their career. I used to sit at the table and like we would be talking. We had one particular lady, always comes to mind, Valerie. Valerie was a rock star. Valerie was a very unpolished salesperson when she came into the organization. Valerie now is running the training for this entire organization. But in the middle, people were saying, I don't think we should promote her. I don't think she's, leadership material, which they were so wrong. If you think about Valerie 1.0, I don't know, maybe I still thought she was amazing. But Valerie 2.0, the Valerie that was reading every leadership book she could get her hands on, that was, on all webinars, that was on her own dime, flying to other offices to see what a successful office looked like. People missed watching all of that because they made a decision too soon about her capabilities. So I'm going to say that last question on there, who do you need to give a clean slate to? What if you for 30 days just started catching somebody doing something right instead of catching them doing things wrong? Would that shift how you feel about who they are? So that would be my challenge to you. And it works well on husbands and wives as well. All right. Last couple of things. Excuses has to be on the list, right? I think there's two things, the next one we'll talk about in a minute, but you can't be the person that is always, yeah, but. I hope that there's two words I would like for you to never use again. The first one is but, because anytime you say but, you've just negated everything that's said. So use the word and. It works beautifully, right? If somebody says, I can't believe you didn't, close on Friday. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. Yeah, but I mean, if the title of the company, we didn't, and in the future, and this is what we're doing about it. Like, just freaking own it. I can't stand a person that needs to be right and that, needs to, throw other people under the bus. This is definitely an accountability leak, somebody that is into the excuse business. The other word, by the way, because you'll ask me what it is why. Never use the word why. If I say, why did you do that? I've created a defensive posture immediately. Every why question can be asked with what led to that. Tell me more about. What were you kind of thinking through that? If you just, that makes you more approachable as a leader. It creates a little bit more balance. And the minute you say why, you have put yourself in a power position and the fight is on. I have to defend myself. So there's that. That ability to take responsibility. I don't know. I have a lot to say about this. I'm going to move on because of time, but I'll just say, be the person that's like, yep, that's what happened. so much easier to deal with. We could say this one, the fear of change, this is the last one today. This one we've just been kicked in the head for sure. Like everything that we have known over the last couple of years has definitely been challenged. I think the thing I want to offer you in a leadership role, there's one word on this slide that I think is the most important word, and it's contextualizing. I'm going to say this, the leaders that can contextualize change have the greatest opportunity to eliminate fear on their teams. And, you know, I work with a lot of different, you know, organizations, and I went into a company. It's been before the pandemic. It's been many, many, many years ago. And I'm going to try to not give away who it is, but oil prices were down. It's a Tulsa company. And the leader got up there and said, listen, times are tough. I thought we were in a V. I thought, you know, prices were going to hit rock bottom and they were going to bounce back up. You know, didn't happen. Then I thought we were in a U. I thought, well, we're going to stay down a little bit longer and, you know, then they're going to turn around. That's not going to happen. We're in an L. It isn't going to get any better. So let me tell you what we're doing about it. And I'm just going to tell you, like, that guy starts the meeting. He's an amazing CEO. But he starts the meeting contextualizing, answering questions, letting people understand what's going on. He did not put, as they say, lipstick on a pig. No offense to pigs. But when you think about, you know, the leader that's always trying to make it sound good, that is a credibility leap. We talked about that a couple of slides ago. You have to be the person that contextualizes it and says, whatever's happening, we're going to get through it. And here's how you contextualize change. It's simply this. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. These are the potential solutions. This is where I'm leaning. What am I missing? It's those 4 steps. This is the problem we're trying to solve. These are the potential solutions we're looking at. This is where we are leaning. What are we missing? That is how you introduce change to an organization. First of all, you think it's obvious that they know the problems you're trying to solve. It's not. They don't know. They're only thinking about themselves. Remember, their world is their world, and they're not privy to some of the stuff that leadership is looking at. This is a problem we're trying to solve. These are the potential solutions, saying, we didn't do this quickly. These are all the things that are up in the air. This is where we're leaning, which kind of gives them a sense. And the last question, is there anything we're missing? It's just an opportunity for feedback. It's an opportunity for somebody to say, did we think about this? We did, actually. And let me tell you what, the contextualizing change is how you get organizations to move forward. If you don't provide the context of the story, then what happens is people feel like things are happening to them instead of happening for them. I can tell you, I used to be involved in some, you know, big conversations and be like, oh my gosh, this is best for the team. You know, we're not going to change the comp structure. They'll really like this. And then we would roll out the change and then be like up in arms, like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. And I'd be like, doing this to you? Are you kidding me? Do you know that, you know, I'm like, we were fighting for you. Like, I threw myself on the floor. I lit myself on fire. You know, of course they're not going to know that. And that's not on them. That's on me, right? As the leader, as the person to say, this is what's going on. Your job as a leader is to see around corners. And it's to let people know some of the things that are coming. To me, being transparent doesn't mean I'm going to tell you every single thing in my head. Being transparent means I'm going to give you any of the big stuff and I'm going to kind of let you know what's going on, right? It just means that people are not going to be surprised. Number 4, what am I missing? And what that is just when you ask that question, what am I missing? It's an opportunity for people to tell you what they think you maybe missed. And every once in a while, you did miss it. And it'll be nice to have a group of super thoughtful people taking a look at that. All right, here are the 7 things. I'm going to put it on the screen. I'm going to give away a couple of books. Before I do, I want to ask you this. Which one is the one that you need to be paying the most attention to right now? Throw it in the chat box. What number do you think, this is the one I need to probably go a little bit deeper on? What do you think? Thank you. Oh, interesting. All right. We're getting consensus. I'll tell you my thing on consensus. I want to say this. I bet you all are some of the nicest people I would ever know, as most real estate agents are. And it also becomes a liability as a leader because, we want everybody to like all of our decisions. So I will offer you this: try for consensus, but lead by alignment. That if you can get out of the consensus business, trying to please everybody, and if you can get into the alignment business, which is, this is the change, these are the options, this is where I'm leaning, what am I missing? Thank you for the feedback. This is the direction we're going. That's how you get the buy-in of that. And at some point, you have to just move forward in the organization. I watch way too many leaders thinking, oh, gosh, I've got to make everybody happy. Guess what? Leadership sucks if that's what your total goal is. You better get out of that business and get in the alignment business. You got to move this organization forward. That's going to be what determines your success as a leader. All right. So I love that 4 was in the lead because that makes you a very normal group. When I do this, usually distractions is the thing. So time blocking, I want to say one of the things, since this was in the lead, and that is schedule some time on your calendar where you have open space. We call it black box in our organization. If there's a black box on somebody's calendar, guess what that means? Nothing's happening except that person is being strategic about what's the one thing that I need to really be focusing on. It's an opportunity. It's a 2-hour block. That's it. Once a week, by the way, which I think you should do once a day. I think you should have an hour a day where you turn off all technology and you just think about what's the one thing that I can do that's going to move this team forward. What's the one thing that's going to have the biggest ROI? There's a book out called The One Thing. I spoke at a conference many years ago with the author was on stage too, and I took as many notes there. And when I walked out of there, what I thought is, you know what? I just need to not, I'm a to-do list maker, but I'm not doing a good job of prioritizing the to-do list. And when you start to say, not what are the 10 things I'm going to do, and I'm going to do all the easy things first so I can get the hit of dopamine, fantastic, I love it, of marking everything off the list. That's not where your value is. What's the most important thing on that list? What is going to influence the organization and affect the most people? That's the biggest value. All right, questions or comments before I do the big giveaway?
Hey, Tracy, you had us all once you mentioned The One Thing. It's actually written by Gary Keller Williams. So we're all fans. And so we all have the lessons that they teach.
Right.
This is our #1 productivity tool right here.
Right. I forgot Gary was Gary Keller. Nice.
It's cool. We'll get you guys connected. Some questions that I had, because lots of us are newer in the leadership business. Like, we got into real estate and we're a salesperson. We like helping people. And then soon enough, we realized we've got some success and we need help and leverage with people. And so we weren't necessarily in the leadership business. And that is a very different role, like you said. The ones that stood out to me that I keep coming up with in my hiring process of bringing the right people on and the talent, it really matters. You've got to filter through the resumes and the people and the conversations. But I heard the gossip one, that can be a killer of culture if they are that way. But how would you recommend finding that out in the hiring process before they're a part of your world? Is there a way?
If there's a gossiper?
Yeah, like if they're that kind of person.
You can't find out. You have to react immediately, though. I can tell you, one of the things that we teach, we have online courses, I'm going to give some of that stuff away here in a minute too, is something called a timely talk. A timely talk is that, your job in a leadership role is to normalize success and expectations of the culture. Like, there's got to be an orientation. There's got to be somehow where people understand what's expected of them if they're in this role. And the minute somebody deviates from that, you have to point it out. Like, I wrote a blog one time that got a bunch of blowback, and people were like, I disagree with it. And I doubled down, and then people are like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Maybe. And it is quit being so nice to new people. That's the name of the blog, because I think what we do is we want them to like us and we want them to love the organization. And so we start saying, oh, that's okay. And it's not okay. And our culture suffers. What you need to do is create a culture that of high producers, which is, this is not a club team. There's going to be cuts. This is a high performing team. And to be on a high performing team, not everybody's going to make it. And let me just tell you, that's why Boise, Idaho outproduces Chicago, Illinois, because the leader stands up there and says, you seem like nice, optimistic people, but let me tell you what it takes to be part of this team. And that is what people want. People want to follow somebody that expects them to do their best. People want to follow somebody that's building something special, that has a really big vision, and that's what they want to be part of. They don't want to be part of a team where you just have to show up, you can fog a mirror, that's great, you can be on this team. No, no, no. That's a very different environment. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that's
I think so. And I think I'll just speak for a lot of my friends here, because I know them all so well. We all go through this together, is that we are small teams. So we're not a big corporate world with corporate money. And so each hire does matter. The one that I really noticed is the labels and biases. If I am bringing on one or two new agents into my world, like that matters. And if I need to kind of filter through, how many times am I passing over people that may not be my driver style?
Yep.
A lot.
I think we hire too quickly and fire too slowly.
Yeah.
I'd like to reverse that. You know, we hire, quickly, we get enthusiastic, affinity bias kicks in. Oh my gosh, they're going to change everything. And then they get in there like, oh my gosh, this person's a nightmare. Okay, well, maybe I'll wait it out. Okay, well, maybe they'll change. No, they won't. I can say this. I would say that most people are allowing people on their team to hold everybody else hostage because they are gossiping or they're destroying the culture. And I don't care who they are, get rid of them. I do not care how much they produce, get rid of them, because that is the thing that will hold you back. Kathleen.
I went to a Rochester Chamber of Commerce, or local Chamber of Commerce, yesterday morning, or no, it was Monday, because we were closed for Juneteenth Day, and it was on diversity and inclusion.
Nice.
I learned so much that I didn't, and I'm on the diversity, equity, inclusion task force for the KW International. So, I'm on calls every month with Julia Lachey and my regional director. So I think I'm doing it right. I learned from listening, and there was like 5 different business owners from all different walks of life, utilities, a hospital, a local institution that hires kids that are disabled. And she said, take a look on your teams or in your office. How many people in wheelchairs have you hired? How many hearing impaired? How many, there's so many different minority groups that we don't even think about. And I realized how I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that. So it's opening up my brain to think totally different on every aspect. And as a leader, it's exhausting being a leader, and I'm a baby leader. I'm just starting out. And it's just, you really have to open up your mind and change the way you think. What's it saying, Jennie? Look at the way, for bold, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
Yeah, listen, I will say the last 2 years since the George Floyd murder, we have done more DEI work than we've done leadership training. And there's a lot of, really great information. And I love that you're investing in that and that you're learning from that, because diverse teams are going to outproduce high performing, homogeneous teams. And there's a lot of data now to support that. And so, man, I'm going to move on, but I want to stay connected. I'm going to do my giveaway, but I got to do my quick commercial. Whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, would love to stay connected with you. And I will say this: if you text my name to that 66866, that will get you. It'll get you a newsletter whenever we can do it. You can also, let's see, there's another way to do it. We have an online course. It's like $25. I'm just going to offer it to you. If you'll use the ELL50 code, my company is exceptionalleaderslab.com. It's normally $50. You get it for half price if you just put that in the coupon code. I'm going to give away, this is our first book. It's What Exceptional Leaders Know. And I have the Exceptional Leaders Playbook on the back. And we've got some online courses. So I'm going to give away 3 different things. All you have to do is guess the number that is on my sheet. Before you do it, here's what you have to do. Everybody in your chat box, do not hit enter until I tell you. I will type a number from 1 to 300. in the chat box. That's all you have to do, 1 to 300. Do not hit go yet. If you land on the exact number that I have, I will give you all online courses, both books, a backpack, like a whole swag bag. You'll get coffee mugs, you'll get whatever I can pull out of the closet in there, you'll get that. If no one hits it on the nose, then whoever's the closest will win. All right. Go. Hit enter. Ooh, Kim's the closest so far. All right, so so it is stopped. I do not see the exact number, but I can tell you who all are the winners. Let's see. Here's the number, 29 is the number. Somebody's 28. So who is that? Kim. So congratulations to Kim. Jennie, you're gonna have to help me here with all of this. So I will get a book to you. Who else? So we're going to pick 3 winners. Is Edna? No, 22. Wendy. Looks like Wendy is in the running too. Anybody else? Oh my gosh. So if I'm going to have to go deeper then.
I can't even keep up with this. So Kim, was it? Oh, I got it. Okay, Kim.
Got it?
This, and then we've got Wendy. Got it. And then
Looks
who?
like Edna. I think Edna's is in there at 15.
There you go.
All right, there's the 3 winners. So
Awesome.
would love to have you as part of our community. And listen, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate you bringing me along on your journey. And with that, I think we're finished. So
Yeah, we're finished. Tracy, I'll get over all these names to you so you can get them their prizes. Congrats, guys. Anybody else going to go buy some books or sign up for some classes like me? Thank you so much, Tracy. We are so grateful for you. Have a blessed day. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.